What if the first thing you did when entering a church was to take off your shoes? Not because someone asked you, but because the ground itself had become holy. In Ethiopia, this is not a ritual, it is reverence. Before stepping into any Ethiopian Orthodox church, men and women alike pause at the threshold, bend down, and remove their footwear. They walk barefoot into the presence of God. This is not a cultural quirk. It is a direct response to a command God gave thousands of years ago. Remove your shoes, for the place where you stand is holy ground. While many churches today see this as an Old Testament symbol, Ethiopia has kept it as a living, breathing act of worship. But why? And is this practice truly unique to Ethiopia, or does it connect to a wider, forgotten tradition? But before continuing, please subscribe to my channel. It is a big deal to me, but a matter of a single click to you. For most Christians, the story of Moses at the burning bush is a foundational moment, but it is a moment in the past. God spoke, Moses obeyed, the moment passed. But for the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the command "remove your shoes" was not a one-time instruction for a single prophet. It was a timeless principle for how all human beings should approach the holy presence of God. When God said, "The place where you stand is holy ground," He was not describing a property of the dirt. He was declaring that His presence transforms whatever it touches. To stand in that presence is to stand on something that is no longer ordinary. Removing shoes became the physical acknowledgement of that transformation, a sign that the person entering was crossing from the common world into the realm of the sacred. The command to remove shoes appears elsewhere in Scripture, confirming its significance. When Joshua encounters the commander of the Lord's army near Jericho, he is told, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." The same God who spoke to Moses speaks to Joshua. In both cases, the presence of the divine, whether in a burning bush or a heavenly warrior, makes the ground sacred. The Ethiopian tradition sees these not as isolated incidents, but as a consistent revelation. Whenever God draws near, the appropriate response is to remove what separates us from the earth He has sanctified. The church building, where the Eucharist is celebrated and where the angels gather, is such a place. The Ethiopian Church also draws on its unique canonical books to reinforce this understanding. The Book of Jubilees, preserved fully only in Gizi, emphasizes that the patriarchs observed practices of reverence before God that were not merely cultural but commanded. While the specific command to remove shoes is not repeated in Jubilees, the principle of treating sacred space with utmost respect permeates the text. Likewise, the Book of Enoch, another pillar of Ethiopian canon, describes the heavenly sanctuary where even the angels remove their garments of pride when standing before the Lord. For Ethiopians, these texts confirm that removing shoes is not a human invention but a heavenly pattern, one that the earthly church is privileged to imitate. But before continuing, please subscribe to my channel. It is a big deal to me, but a matter of a single click to you. What does removing shoes signify? In the ancient Near East, to remove one's sandals before a superior was an act of humility and submission. Sandals protected the feet from the dust and dirt of the road. To remove them was to acknowledge that you were no longer on your own journey but had entered the domain of another. You came not as a traveler, but as a servant. For the Ethiopian Orthodox, this symbolism is central. When a worshiper steps out of their shoes, they are saying, "I am not in control here. I am not a master. I am a guest, a servant, a child entering the house of my Father." The act of removal is a physical confession of dependence on God. But the symbolism goes deeper than mere social custom. Removing shoes also represents stripping away anything that comes between us and the sacred earth that God has sanctified. In many Ethiopian churches, the floor is not merely a floor. It is ground that has been consecrated by the presence of the tablet, the ark-like representation of God's covenant, and by centuries of prayer. To walk barefoot is to feel that ground directly, without insulation. It is a sensory reminder that the Christian faith is not a disembodied spirituality. It involves the whole person: feet, skin, posture, touch. The body participates in worship, and removing shoes is one of the most elemental ways of saying, "I am fully present, with nothing between me and this holy place. Obedience is another layer. The Ethiopian Orthodox do not remove their shoes because they find it convenient or meaningful in a personal way. They do it because God commanded it, and the Church has faithfully transmitted that command. Obedience itself is a form of worship. In a world where individualism often trumps tradition, this act of corporate, consistent obedience is countercultural. It says, I submit to something older than myself, something tested by generations, something that connects me to Moses and Joshua and the countless saints who have walked barefoot into the presence of God. This obedience is not blind legalism. It is trust that God knows how his people should approach him. But before continuing, please subscribe to my channel. It is a big deal to me, but a matter of a single click to you. Many assume that removing shoes in church is unique to Ethiopia. In fact, it is a shared practice across the entire Oriental Orthodox communion, a family of ancient churches that have preserved customs lost or abandoned elsewhere. In Egypt, the Coptic Orthodox Church, with roots stretching back to the 1st century, requires the same. Before entering any Coptic church, worshippers remove their shoes, following the same interpretation of Exodus. In Syria and Lebanon, the Syriac Orthodox Church maintains the tradition. The Armenian Apostolic Church, one of the oldest national churches in the world, also holds to this practice. These churches are not copying Ethiopia. They are all heirs to a common ancient understanding. The ground consecrated to God is holy, and removing shoes is the proper response to that holiness. The Indian Orthodox Church, Malankara Orthodox Syrian Church, provides a fascinating example. In the southern Indian state of Kerala, where Christianity dates back to the Apostolic era, historic churches like St. Mary's Foreign Church in Kuruvillangad still require visitors to remove their shoes. Travel guides specifically mention this as an essential custom. The Indian Orthodox, like the Ethiopians, trace their practice to the same ancient interpretation of Exodus. This continuity across such vast distances, Ethiopia, Egypt, Syria, Armenia, India, suggests that the practice was widespread in early Christianity, not a later development. It was not a matter of culture, but of theology. Why did these churches retain the practice while others, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, largely abandoned it? The answer lies in how different traditions interpret the Old Testament's relevance to worship. Many Western churches view the command to Moses as specific to that moment in salvation history, not a universal law. For the Oriental Orthodox, however, the principle remains active. They see the church building as a continuation of holy ground. If God's presence filled the burning bush, it now fills the sanctuary through the Eucharist, the tablet, and the gathered congregation. Therefore, the same reverence is due. This is not legalism. It is a conviction that worship engages the whole person, and that the physical world, including the ground we walk on, is transformed by God's presence and must be honored accordingly. But before continuing, please subscribe to my channel. It is a big deal to me, but a matter of a single click to you. In modern times, some have suggested that removing shoes in church has a practical benefit, discharging static electricity or grounding the body. This idea, while interesting, has no connection to the ancient practice. The Ethiopian Church, and the Oriental Orthodox family to which it belongs, has never understood this act as a matter of physics. It is a matter of the heart. The Church Fathers, the liturgical texts, and the living tradition all speak of humility, obedience, and reverence, never of electrical grounding. To reduce this profound act to a health practice is to miss its entire point. It would be like explaining the Eucharist as a nutritional supplement. The practice is spiritual, not pragmatic. The misconception likely arises because both practices involve bare feet, but the meanings are worlds apart. In the secular grounding movement, the goal is physical well-being, often detached from any transcendent context. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, the goal is spiritual well-being, alignment with God through humility and obedience. The bare foot is not a tool, it is a sign. It says, I am standing on ground that God has claimed as his own. I am here not to take, but to receive. not to be grounded in the earth, but to be lifted to heaven. The physical act serves a spiritual reality. To confuse the two is to mistake the sign for the thing signified. It is also worth noting that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has a rich tradition of theological reflection. Scholars within the church have written extensively on the meaning of worship. None of these writings mention electricity or grounding. Instead, they focus on the concept of kedes, sanctification, the process by which ordinary things become holy through God's presence. The church building is sanctified by the tablet, the Eucharist, and the prayers of the saints. The floor is not just a floor, it is sanctified ground. Removing shoes is a way of acknowledging that sanctity. It is a liturgical act, not a wellness trend. The church invites all who enter to leave behind not only their shoes, but also their worldly preoccupations, stepping into a space where heaven touches earth. But before continuing, please subscribe to my channel. It is a big deal to me, but a matter of a single click to you. In Ethiopia today, removing shoes before entering church is so ingrained that it is rarely questioned. Even in urban churches with marble floors, in rural churches with dirt floors, in rock-hewn churches carved centuries ago, the practice is the same. Visitors are gently reminded if they forget. Shoes are left at the door, often in the care of someone who watches over them. This is not a burden, but a privilege. For Ethiopians, the barefoot condition is part of what it means to be in church, a state of vulnerability, openness, and readiness to meet God. It marks the transition from the marketplace to the sanctuary, from the noise of daily life to the silence of prayer. The practice is also connected to the broader Ethiopian understanding of sacred space. In Ethiopian tradition, the church is not merely a building. It is modeled on the heavenly temple described in the Book of Enoch in the Old Testament. The three concentric divisions, the Kedest, holy place, the Kedest Kedusin, holy of holies, and the outer courtyard, reflect the structure of the tabernacle. Removing shoes at the outermost gate corresponds to the ancient requirement that priests and worshippers approach with reverence. Just as Moses was commanded at the bush, just as the priests of the temple ministered barefoot, so Ethiopian Christians today enter the outer court of God's house barefoot, preparing to draw nearer. For the Ethiopian Orthodox Christian, removing shoes is not a one-time act, but a weekly, often daily, discipline. It is part of the rhythm of life. Children learn it from their parents. Visitors are quietly instructed. It is a mark of identity, but more importantly, it is a mark of reverence. In a world that often rushes, the act of stopping to remove shoes forces a pause, a moment to remember where you are and before whom you stand. It is a physical prayer, and like all prayers, it shapes the one who prays. Over a lifetime, this small act cultivates a disposition of humility that carries beyond the church doors. The Ethiopian church believes that how we approach God shapes how we approach all of life. The tradition of removing shoes in church is not a relic of a distant past. It is a living practice, kept alive by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and its sister churches around the world. It is rooted not in modern theories about electricity or hygiene, but in an ancient understanding that the presence of God transforms ordinary ground into holy ground. And when we step onto that ground, we are invited to step out of our ordinary selves, to remove not only our shoes, but our pride, our distractions, our self-sufficiency. To stand barefoot before God is to say, I am not in control here. I am a servant. I am on holy ground. And in that moment, worship becomes not something we do, but someone we become. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, share, and like to encourage me produce further similar videos.